How's it going, guys? This is Jay Sweebles hollering out at you, back with another video talking about more about my progress in learning languages. This time it's not going to be a progress video of me speaking in a language, rather as this language learning as a whole. And it's basically going to be about how I'm switching my learning methods or trying out a new one. Right now I'm just testing it out, any new method. We don't just fully commit ourselves to it, which I guess in a way I have, because it's all I've been doing, which part of that's just because of time constraints. But anyways, pretty much this is just going to be talking about how I'm changing my method of learning the three languages I'm currently learning, which is Indonesian, Malay, and Spanish. So basically, this isn't anything new, and I'm not trying to take credit for it. I'm just giving my input on it and how I think it's either helping or not helping me, which I'll get into. And basically what I'm going to be talking about is comprehensive input, and just the words of that, I know you're probably thinking of some people such as Steve Kaufmann, Olly Richards, and any other people like Stephen Krashen, who I believe supports this. So anyways, basically just to kind of define terms, if you don't know what comprehensive input is, comprehensive input is basically where you're focused more on, like, most of us who are serious about studying languages, we're all probably doing some kind of input activities, whether that's watching movies, reading books, things like that. But the emphasis is on the word comprehensive, which means that the input that we're choosing to immerse ourselves in is things that, are, as people such as Steve Kaufmann would probably say, things that are either just a level above or slightly above our current level in the language, or, just anything, that, it's not completely comprehensive. We don't understand everything from the start, but there's enough that we do understand where we can start to learn from context, and things like that. So I've been using a new app, and this isn't sponsored or anything, but it's Steve Kaufmann's app, LingQ. I'm not sure how you say it, but I think it's Link. But anyways, I've been trying it for about a couple weeks, so I know I'm probably not just the most qualified to review it, and this isn't an app review. I may choose to in a future video, but basically I'm just talking about comprehensive input as a whole. And for people who may be watching this, who may stumble upon this, I'd like to hear your experiences with it, or maybe you can give me advice of how to really take advantage of it, because I'm going to talk about the things that I've noticed that were good, things that kind of have me questioning, and things like that. So this is a highly favored method by the people that I just mentioned, and the reasoning goes about how I laid it out, that if you're listening to things or reading things, that are just understandable enough, you're going to learn from context, you're going to learn things like that. And that's basically how I've been using Link for the most part. Link, like Indonesian, is my best second language, as in it's the one that I'm the most comfortable in. And so a lot of more basic, simpler material that I come across, maybe not news articles or anything, a lot of Indonesian news articles I've attempted to read still had a bunch of words I didn't know, and that might just have to do with because it was a topic that I wasn't really familiar with, so that I'm sure has an impact on it. But anyways, I've been using Link, to mostly for reading. I've done some listening with what's it called, Spanish, but anyways, I want to just, like I said, I don't want to stay on the intro. I've pretty much just been using it, just mostly as a way to increase my vocabulary in these languages, and it's been a big help for me with Spanish. So I'm going to start out talking about the things. I'm going to kind of talk about why I started changing my method. I'm not, and don't take this as a video saying, this is the way to do it, because it's something I'm new to. And while I will go ahead and say my results so far, at least as Spanish is concerned, are very good. So, and many people really do favor this method, and I can see why. But I just am using this video to talk about my experience over the past couple of weeks, and just as a way for people to discuss it, down in the comments, give me advice, and maybe I can give you some advice. And it's really just, some things, whether you agree with this method or not, are, I think, are universal things that, one of these being, that if we're watching something in Spanish, like if I'm a complete beginner to Spanish and I'm trying to watch a 90-minute movie, chances are that's not going to do me much good. As for comprehension, some people would argue that it gets you used to the language. I'm not so much talking about that, but as for being able to understand what's talking to me, like picking out the different words, I don't know how much it'll help with that, but I'm gonna, basically what got me started, so Indonesian for the past 9-10 months, however long it's been by now, Indonesian's been my main focus. And speaking, obviously it needs more improvement, which I could see in the video I just recorded about my new series I'm doing, whatever you want to call it. But, speaking, I wouldn't say is my weak point of Indonesian, rather it's understanding. And pretty much, so part of that I think is due to my neglect of, I haven't been, really focused. Well, there's been that part of me, that doesn't want to practice my listening, because whenever I've tried it in the past I didn't understand a lot. But anyways, so that was something I wanted to improve. So basically, the other day I was driving back to college from home. I went home for the weekend, and one of my friends that I'd met has a podcast that she had recommended me listen to in order to practice my Indonesian, And I'd listened to it a little bit, but not too far, for the same reasons I'd mentioned before. But, I had a 2 by that. I kind of started listening to about maybe 20% of the way through the drive, and I had to stop. But I put it on, and I listened to her podcast for about 2 hours probably, or maybe a little more of the drive. So that was just 2 hours of me just, driving, on a somewhat quiet road, just listening to Indonesian, and I was really happy to find, that I was understanding, a decent bit. I was still having to really focus, on what I was listening to. I couldn't be lazy and just kind of be passive about it and understand it. But what I did find was, by the end of this trip, I found that I could kind of relax some, like I wasn't having to strain as much, to pick out some of these words, And not only did it help me, I think, just to be able to relax some and listening, but, it helped me because, there were some words that just repeated itself, like, one of these words was probably soal, and then another one was budaya, and, so, like, I kept hearing these words in the podcast, I was like, because they're words I've seen before, but I either just never figured out the meaning or had forgot. It's easy for me to forget words in Indonesian, and just, I'll try and knock it out and look up the meaning, and I'll see it and just kind of barely notice it and forget really quickly. But, now that I learned what the word budaya means, because of how much that word stuck out to me, it's a lot easier for me to remember. And, anyways, so, trying to think. So, there was a couple ways where I think it helped me, because, it helped me to learn a new word, and it helped me to pretty much get more comfortable listening, But not only did it help me there, but it also turned me on to more to this concept of comprehensive input. So there's a new channel I haven't watched it in a few days because I'm trying to focus more on LingQ, but there's a new channel that I found for learning Spanish called Dreaming Spanish, and anyways, it's just it's basically a channel where he does all of his lessons, pretty much in Spanish for different levels of speaking. There's his super beginner series, beginner, and so on. And I watched a couple of those, and that was really helpful for me just to be able to write down some words. I think by the end of the day, I don't know that not all of it came from just his videos, but just from reading a lot of things in Spanish and listening to him a lot. I managed to write down like 50 new words. Just because I wrote them down doesn't mean I've memorized them all. Some of them I kind of remember, but it does help me just to find out, because in Indonesian I don't always know, the words that I need to try and figure out. I can't always think of everything. But what this did, like, it's probably a better thing to watch in repetition. That's another thing that I liked about this podcast. Like, TV show, movie, not that these are bad to listen to, but, short, repetitious content is really good. Like what she did in her podcast that I really liked was that, she would have a set topic, so it's not like a movie where 1 minute they're talking about, like what's going on in this situation, and they're moving on, it follows the same topic. So one topic, I'm just making up stuff, say one topic is talking about a sport, so because I've been listening to it, I can guess that probably the rest of this, podcast I'm listening to is going to be about that sport or something similar, so I'm not getting overwhelmed. But another thing, like going back to the Dreaming Spanish, it helped me because this was a video, so there's some visual context. If you're recording, like if I'm trying to explain something in English, like if I want to say talking, I can do that, like do gestures. And I've heard of it before. I never really looked at it much, but I think that is an interesting way to learn. I kind of discredited it too early before, but it is really good just for getting, like, a lot of the vocab I got has been kind of more passive stuff that isn't so much something I can use daily. So, for example, a word, like the word for wave in Spanish, or the word for crab, just things like that. These aren't things I'm probably not going to say the word wave very often, unless I'm a surfer or something, which I'm not. But eventually we're going to need that because, obviously we don't want to waste our time just focusing on, words that we're not going to use as much. We want to try and get more of this crucial stuff first, but, eventually if we want to get anywhere in this language and be able to have deeper discussions, we're going to need more of this passive vocabulary, and it's good at that because you're getting, like, for me as a beginner in Spanish, even though I'm progressing a lot faster than I did in Indonesian, which part of that might just be because it's the third language I'm attempting, or fourth if you count Malay, but I only say that because I know Malay and Indonesian are different. I'm not saying they're the same languages, but they're just so similar in my mind to me. Like, it's just, I don't know, I tend to, you hopefully get what I mean. They're different languages, just really similar. But, learning Spanish, it's been a lot easier, just for various reasons. Just the amount of similarity to English in terms of a lot of the vocabulary and things like that. But this is where I go wrong. I drift on thoughts and lose what I was saying, but pretty much, it's just, I can't think. So, just learning Spanish, like, as a beginner, like, I'll be watching a video, where he's talking about, food, for example, and, I might be learning different names for food, but for me as a new beginner, I'm also learning some more words, that are just daily things, but things that I don't already know yet. So, just basic vocabulary I'm learning from this. And the same thing is true when I'm in my experience using LingQ. So I've probably been using LingQ the most for Spanish, just trying to get a decent foundation in Spanish, that I can use in daily conversation as well as just other vocabulary. And, I'm taking classes in Spanish too, so that helps too. But, LingQ, what it's been doing is, I might read a short story or article, whatever kind of content about a certain topic, but it's also helping me to fill in these gaps, of just basic vocabulary, and those are going to be the words that are probably going to be easier for me to memorize because, I'm just saying this for example, like if I didn't know the word for and in Spanish, well, think of how long or how much that's going to come up in a short story or, any of these little words that are in a bunch of sentences, but, so this is another thing, even for like these more passive words that aren't used as much, the repetition, because the fact that they're short stories, it didn't take me but a few minutes to listen to it, and once I was telling my friend, like I started one story only understanding most of the basic stuff, but all these extra words, that I didn't know, I didn't understand, but, I just took my time, went through it, LingQ, if you don't know, you save the words you don't know and you just pass over the words you do know, and basically it has a spatial repetition system, if that's the right word for it, spatial. But, pretty much, you can review these words, and now, like, obviously with the context, I'm going to remember these words, so some words I might not be able to recall, on their own if I need to bring it up in a sentence, but whenever I read it, though, I can understand it, and, I tried listening to it, and, of course, they kind of slow down the speech, because it's meant for beginners, but, listening back to it, if I concentrated, it took a little bit more effort, but if I concentrated, I already had an idea what was being said, so that kind of helps me to be able to understand it. And now if I read that article, or it's not an article, that short story, even though it's only a few pages long, I can understand about 90 to maybe even 100% as opposed to, just as opposed to, what's it called, before. But, another thing is, it is kind of helping with grammar too, because, grammar, it's a debated topic as to how much emphasis we should have in studying grammar, and it's unavoidable, but, there's going to be debate as to, some people are like, you don't worry about grammar, just read and stuff, and there's some who's like, no, you break out the textbooks and study it. As usual, I'm probably somewhere in the middle on that, but anyways, it's just a good thing for me to be reading this, because, Spanish, one of the notable hard parts of Spanish is the conjugations, which I already have somewhat of an idea. It's not like I just started using LingQ for Spanish from scratch. I already knew some because I've been studying for a few months by now, but, it's helping though, because I haven't studied the future tense conjugations, but now I already kind of know one way to conjugate a verb into the future tense in Spanish. So it's filling in some gaps for grammar too, and obviously reading Spanish, I'm coming across some grammatical concepts, which I didn't know about and still confuse me, but at least I kind of understand it more whenever I read it now. And, hopefully the hope is that it'll bleed over into, or, come over into when I read other things. I'm not sure I can use it effectively in a sentence yet, just because it's not something I'm used to, but, all of this, it's covering multiple areas. It's something I've talked about before, it's helping me learn a lot of vocabulary, but it's also helping me, to practice listening, comprehension, and things like that. So now that I've kind of talked about the good things, I want to talk about something else, and this is an area where I'm hoping those of you who are familiar with this can help me with. So this is going to be varied or variant. I don't know what the right word for that is. It's going to depend on the current level you have. So, obviously I don't need to tell you that if you go into learning or reading Spanish on this app with a level of B2, you're going to have a lot easier of a time with someone who's an A1. That's just common sense, but, pretty much just, I'm trying to think how to say it. So, one thing that's hard for me, especially Spanish, because there's so many of these words I don't know. Whenever I go through these stories, I'm saving probably 50 to 100 per short story I come across, because there's going to be so many new words. And that's both a good thing, because, if I can memorize these, and that's 50 to 100 new words that I know and that I can use later on. But also, it does provide a problem for me that I'm still trying to learn, and I think I know more about what I should do about it. But if you know something more efficient, then you can tell me in the comments. And that problem is, for me as a beginner in Spanish, I'm saving all these words, and there's 2 short stories I've kind of been working on just in repetition. Well, one I've only went through once. The other I've been trying to repeat more, trying to learn the words from that. And because of that, now I have anywhere from 200 to 300 words that I have saved on LingQ for Spanish, that I need to memorize. And, this was my problem with Babbel, which part of that was just my laziness and that I didn't use it as much. But, a problem with some language apps, and I think LingQ I'm not saying LingQ necessarily has this problem, because I want to talk about what I've been doing to try and combat this issue for myself. Just having these large stockpiles of words to memorize, and, my problem with Babbel, I'm not trying to put Babbel down, but Babbel, I would miss weeks at a time, because I'd be more focused on the output part and speaking, and just because of, I just didn't use it much, and because of that, I'd have these large stockpiles of words that I needed to go through and review. And LingQ is kind of the same way, in the sense that, if you're completely new to this language, chances are, if you try and read, you're going to come across so many new words that you don't know, that you're going to have this large stockpile of hundreds of words that you need to learn, depending on how much you try and do. But what I've been trying to do to combat this problem is where the repetition comes in, and I've seen others say the same. So LingQ has, like I told you, it has a spaced repetition system. I think that's the right way. I said spatial earlier, but it has this repetition system, and one thing I do like about it is, so it has a rating system, or however you want to say it. So it has a numbered system where you can number each word, from 1 to 6 or 7, I can't remember, and each number represents, how well you know it. So 0 would be you don't know it, or maybe it's something else, but the idea is if say I know this word pretty well, I can use it and recognize it in a sentence. So I can write this down, or not write it down, I can select the number that would correspond to that. And because I know it, if I know it, it's not going to test me on it. But say it's a word that I might can recognize in a sentence, but can't say I've learned it, so I can select the number for that, and that's going to affect when it comes up in this repetition system. So for one number, you may be quizzed on it the next day. For a higher number or lower number, I can't remember which order it goes, it may bring it back to you in 5-7 days. So I think that's an interesting thing. But what's been helping me, I think it's just good to not just read the content once and call it good, but just to repeat it, and just come back to it and just read it, and I think that's going to help you, to be able to remember it. And like I say, I'm pretty new to this, and so I might find something else. I might find that to be wrong and something else. So if you probably have more experience with this than me, then feel free to give your advice of taking advantage of this method. But to kind of wrap it up, I don't want to make this too long. I have been having many fruits from or success with this method. I would say it's increasing my intake or input of vocabulary a lot, and it's not just categorized, like so many of these apps, that's a good thing to supplement with, if it's not good just to try and learn a bunch of words that relate to animals or things like that. But that's just one of my problems with a lot of apps, it's too narrow. Like, you're just like, I'm glad to learn some categories, instead of just learning things little by little, but as a supplement. But, it's nice just to get a wide range of different words as a whole. And I think that's where this comprehensive input method is strong, is that, you're reading stories, and you're coming across, you're not only learning these commonly used words, a lot in a more effective and efficient pace, but you're also, you're learning more passive words, maybe even passive words that are just more, still, they're passive, but, they're more frequent. And, so I think it's just well-rounded. And obviously you have your listening too, so you're being exposed to the language, and, it's going to be at a level that's more understandable, it's not just words to you. So I'm probably going to wrap it up here. Appreciate y'all watching this. I'm open to critique, or, if you think some of my points are wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm just, like I said, I'm talking about my experience, and like I said, I'm not claiming this stuff as my own, I know there's many people who have talked about this before me, and I feel like a lot of what I talk about on this channel is kind of repetitive anyways. It's kind of hard not to repeat, but hopefully it just passes it on to you, and hopefully you can just learn from my findings and experiences in trying out this method. And if you have another method, that you use, and feel free to leave that, just it'd be nice just to have good discussions in the comments, and just have a community on here that can just discuss these things and help each other out. Well, appreciate you watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.